Oh, they have the So, Jason, how's the sound quality?
It sounded pretty good to me.
Okay. Welcome. Today is May 22nd, 2025. This is the Mendon Conservation Commission. It is 7:01, and we will now call the meeting to order. My name is Carl Hummel. I'm the chair.
Susan Cahalan, Vice Chair. Leah Whiting, Commissioner.
Sweet. We received word that Mike Amandalia is ill and will not be attending. Peter is traveling to a reunion, and we're hoping he might be able to Zoom in. Maybe we'll see who's coming in the door. Okay. So after the roll call, the next item is an opportunity for the public to speak on matters of concern and interest for them. We would be hearing their concerns, but we would not be making any decisions about them other than perhaps to review the matter for investigation and seeing if we could put something on a future meeting. I see people in the audience, but I understand you're here for Lake Nipmuc. Is there anybody interested in speaking about an item that is not already on the agenda? Okay, there are no hands raised either in person or on the screen. So we'll move on to the next item. Notice of intent for Lake Nipmuc, DEP 210 to be determined for Lake Nipmuc. The applicant is us because we're going to be doing work on the Great Pond. We have Colin Grosson from Water and Wetland online. So which of you is going to take it away? Or do I need to we're formally opening the public hearing for this. Right? Are there any other words I need to say? That's fine. Okay, great. You just need to be careful closing the hearing. All right. So, Colin, do you want to start?
Yep. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So I'm Colin Goslin with Water and Wetland. I'm getting a little feedback here. I'm going to turn down my volume. I'll go. So obviously the applicant is town of Mendon. We filed a new notice of intent. We've been doing work here. I believe the original order of conditions was sometimes in the 90s with the previous company. So we're proposing treatment of both native and non-native species. The main target species is variable milfoil. Fortunately, it's only found in a few spots of the lake, right in front of the old marina and a little bit past the two coves past Alicante. Luckily, they haven't spread anywhere else in the lake, due to kind of, maintenance treatments over the years. So we're proposing to continue those. We did ask for, treatment if necessary of some bushy pondweed. It's a native weed, but sometimes it gets a little out of control kind of near the swimming areas. But we don't treat it every year, but sometimes we'll use it for that. Also, algicides, we haven't used it in years, but years ago there was a microscopic algae bloom, and we did treat the pond for that. I'm not sure, how that came, but typically the water quality at the lake is excellent. So I don't foresee us using that this year, but just wanted to have it just in case. But so nothing really new, but happy to answer any questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Couple of questions. Have we tested the dissolved oxygen or the pH in these areas in a while? Because some of these chemicals that you're proposing to use, really, you should know that before you put them on.
Oh yeah, we every site visit we test the we do a
Okay.
DO reading.
Okay. I didn't see that in your report. Can you update that?
Yep.
So you're asking that they put in the NOI submission that they would be doing that kind of testing?
No, I just want to make sure he's using chemicals that are sensitive to pH. And also, if there's not a lot of algae, if the dissolved oxygen in a pond is really good, then he may not have to use chemicals. Some of these chemicals that he's talking about.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure that's accurate. We do, we do test the oxygen. It's more so for, the fish. Um, if say the lake was 200 acres and, you had 100% coverage of vegetation, we wouldn't want to treat all that vegetation because there'd be a chance of dropping the dissolved oxygen while the plants are decaying. Nothing to do with the herbicide. But it's such a small fraction that we're treating. I believe it's 10 acres out of the total pond. But we've always checked. We check temperature and dissolved oxygen prior to treatment, and we've never had an issue there. If it was a low DO, we would probably postpone treatment. But in a large lake like that, if it was a drop in DO, would probably let the town know right away because you possibly might see a fish kill, and would want to know where, what's going on. So we would not treat if that was the case.
Okay, and right now we've only used the dicot. Are we gonna add in some new stuff, it looks like?
Yeah, I think we proposed Procelicor, Captain, which is a copper-based algicide. But the Procelicor, it's great on the milfoil, low toxicology profile.
Yeah.
It is quite a bit more expensive. So I think we just put that in there and then, it would get by this year using the contact herbicides. And if that's something the town wanted to move forward with, would probably budget for that.
And did you see any fanwort in any of your excursions there to the lake?
No, well, we haven't been out there this year. There has been a little, a couple spots where they've found it, but I don't think anyone's found it in, 3-4 years. But,
You don't anticipate having to use that chemical for that this year?
correct.
Okay. And it does say here that you might use some glyphosate.
Yeah, we've never used it out there. But it would be used for like water lilies if they got out of control. But I know that was kind of a blanket. I don't know why we put that in there, but I know there's mechanical removal as well. Hydro raking if necessary to remove some unwanted water lily rhizomes, but I don't foresee that happening.
Yeah, that's the one that everyone's always iffy on, myself included, so, okay.
Yep.
Just wanted to ask you about some of these.
Let me try and make a clarification. The plan that you've submitted, the very thick document, Bob, can you hold that up? This is your proposal of everything that you might possibly want to do over the next 5 years. It may be even longer than that if we decide to renew this instead of creating a new one. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it sounds like in addition to this, things we might need to do, it would be helpful if you came up with here's what we are going to do in the next X months for this year. Is that something that you'd be able to work on?
Yeah, no, that's everything in the proposal. So we haven't even started on a proposal. So if the commission was, if we had a DEP file number, if we got the order conditions, or if you guys approved it, we would send you a proposal with everything in it. We're working with the town, so we wouldn't just go out and put whatever we felt was necessary. So this year we would send you a proposal saying, hey, we're going to treat X amount of acres, 10 acres with, diquat. We can give you a map of where we would do it. And, if some,
Yeah, I think that would, I think maybe a more streamlined, you've been out to the lake, you see what's happening at this point in the spring. and can troubleshoot and then let us know what you think needs to be treated.
Yeah.
And we can discuss that.
My only concern is we do have a timeline. Dan Byers requested that the treatment occur
Before the beach opens.
before the beach opens,
Yeah.
preferably the week of June 16th. So we are going to be continuing tonight because we don't have a DEP number, with the expectation that we'd come back on June 12th. So one of the things I will ask Isabella to do the week before that meeting is, if we still don't have DEP comments, we call up our contacts saying, hey, we're going to have to approve this without the comments if you don't give them to us, because we have the beach deadline. So that would be my preference. I want to make sure this does get done in time for the beach to open safely.
The beach is opening June 23rd, so hopefully treatment the week of the 16th, but there is like the 10-day appeal period and getting the order recorded, so it might not be possible anyways.
Okay, well, we'll see how that pulls out. Susan, did you have a question or comment?
So I understand it's for the whole lake as well? This whole treatment, scheme for 5 years? And, wait, I don't think he's.
Well, he blinked.
Oh, okay, yeah, I just saw that now, the thing is frozen, so, and, the water lily thing, where are we getting rid of the water lilies? They provide important habitat for shade and, as well as on top for the critters, mostly frogs and, whatnot. And also, it's successional anyway, just let it go. Are we treating? Herbicides.
So yeah, the water lilies, I mean, I agree with you. We never recommend eradicating any of them. It was just kind of put in there. Sometimes they can encroach in some areas and you might want to trim them back a little bit, but I agree with you. We never recommend taking out water lilies.
Yeah, if they start hanging out near the town beach, or
Yeah,
if there's
I can see that.
if
Yeah, but
there's
we
a-
could handful.
if there's a boatway that would interfere with people boating, getting out of a cove or something. Okay, any other comments from the commissioners? If not, I'll open it up. Okay, Isabella?
Colin, have you ever really assessed the outlet? And if there's blockage in the outlet, would it be possible to do hydro raking as part of this NOI, or would you think that'd be something else?
I believe this is covered. Obviously it would be run by the town before we did anything. But I've checked it out. I actually met, the owner of the, I believe she owns the property around the dam. It looked to be in pretty good shape. There is some beaver activity around there, but
And
I think
there
it's,
was, I think there was button bush hydro raking some point in the 2010s.
correct.
Earlier.
Okay, I see Catherine Hackinson has a hand raised online. You want to unmute yourself and say something? If not, is there anyone in the audience who has a
Right,
question?
okay.
Oh,
Hello,
okay.
can you hear me?
Now we can, yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. I just had a question about, to Colin about when he thinks it would be a good idea to assess the purple loof strife that we have on the lake.
The best time to do it is when it's flowering, typically in July. It can be treated, but it also can be hand pulled. If it's low enough densities, that's kind of what we recommend. Kind of hand pull it, get it by the roots and bag it.
That's
Well,
also,
we did have some people that live on the lake, and they did try that, and it was a very difficult thing to do. They tried to hand pull it and then bag it. And with all the seeds, it's almost like you're spreading it.
Yeah,
instead of getting rid of it.
yeah, it is tough. I'm not positive I've been on the lake plenty, but I'm not positive the densities of the plants, so I couldn't speak to it. So it is a possibility that we could spray it if need be.
What would you use to spray the loose spray?
I mean, there's two products, obviously, the one that no one wants to talk about, the glyphosate and or imazamox, is another one that we kind of, a lot of people are using now. They're both, we don't use the, anything you can buy at Home Depot. Everything that we use is aquatic safe. So there's no, it's not toxic to the fish that, anything you buy at, Home Depot or something is all toxic to the fish. This is not. We mix it with a surfactant, like a vegetable-based surfactant. So those are the two products.
Obviously, hand pulling is better if we can do that.
Well, there's quite a bit of it in areas, so it's not like you're just talking about a few stems to pull. There's some people that have it quite heavy in their in the front of their properties.
Kathy, are you able to get me a list of what properties you're thinking are higher density? Okay.
Well, I know one would be about around 60 Uxbridge Road. There's some in there, and Wayne, I see you sitting there. Do you know the addresses of where it's dense?
No, well, I know that there's some over in the small cove right opposite the island. It seems to be pretty thick there.
I've seen it at Grandview.
In a Grandview, right? Yep, it's pretty heavy there. That's
Yeah.
And to that old tap, yeah. Speaking as a Lake Association member, a lot of time that we spend is talking about trying to eradicate the purple blue stripe, and everyone on the Lake Association was in favor of having it treated. And again, for a number of reasons. I mean, some of the people are elderly and can't get out there. Other people just are oblivious to it. So, that's something that you consider that would be a good thing.
I think the commission voted to commit $750 to do the joint
Right.
proposal. So I think if we're able to do it under this notice of intent, that's another thing that I don't know if you bill the commissioner or bill you guys, but if it's covered, whether it's we hire Watermelon to do home pulling primarily, but I think we would need some landowner permission. We're not gonna pull people's plants without permission.
It would be good if Colin could assess the strike problem first too. Because he would know more about that.
Because it's a public, because that's a great pond, isn't the shoreline, public use? So at that point, doesn't that, negate the private, end of a landowner and
It
pulling?
depends where it's growing up out though, because it's not always, it might be on the shoreline versus in the water.
As long as it's within the mean, water table, right?
Okay, it sounds like what we would want to have happen is homeowners would identify where the purple blue stripe is, get the information to Isabella, and we'd work with Colin on the upcoming proposal for this summer's treatment. And if you had a section for purple blue stripe that would say hand pulling would cost this much, chemical treatment would cost this, in addition to the other activities that we normally do for milfoil.
And the Lake Association may have to sign off on them being on property for the individual homeowners.
Because it sounds like we don't want to have Colin do the Great Pond part of the patch. Well, there's still the homeowner's property with.
Well, maybe what we could do is just send out an email to members of the Lake Association to see if they have the plan in front of their house and give that to you.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Makes sense, but we don't get cooperation, so
Right.
that, it does make sense.
And that perk, doesn't that, that's on the water's edge, that's part of Great Pond, and it really doesn't go 5 foot past the edge.
Well, as soon as it gets out of the median and high water line, then there's nothing that,
Well, that doesn't grow in the high water line at all. That's in the, right at the edge, that's where you find the purple.
Any other comments?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Why don't we like this plant?
It's invasive and it outcompetes native plants and cattails.
Well, cattails, there's two kinds. One is native, one is
Such as,
the narrow and the broad. And I can never tell the difference, but maybe someone can.
Yeah, no, it's pretty easy to you can differentiate the two.
If there are no other questions or comments, the last thing I would ask you to give us some education on. This is a educational restoration project, and more than that, it is a limited educational restoration project. I attended a MACC, a DEP workshop on this. But could you give an explanation of how this particular NOI is different from the ones we usually get for buildings?
Oh, I'm not the although I attend a lot of these meetings, Carl, I'm not the permitting coordinator in our office, but you know, we talked with the state and we went back and forth and they thought that this would be best to classify it as a limited. But I can follow up and give you a better explanation.
there are
next meeting.
certain categories of ecological restoration NOI, so you fill out a different part of the form that you don't fill out. And it's a way that you can supplement some information and maybe not to be as extensive.
Right.
And burdensome in the permit process.
Limited in a permit means it's special and you get to not, there are certain kinds of information that you just don't provide that you ordinarily would, but that's why they're restricted to certain kinds of projects. Okay. Anything else? So timeline this is we will vote to continue. You're going to come back with a proposal. Would you be doing that before or after we close the hearing?
We can do it. I can probably put one together tomorrow.
Or at least the first draft of that, and we may get input from the homeowners in the Lake Association on specific areas for the purple plan. All right,
They all different names.
time to entertain a motion.
I make a motion to continue the Lake Nipmuc meeting until June 12th.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. See you in a bit.
All right, thank you.
All right, moving on to next item. Notice of intent for 42 Millville Street, DEP number 218-0865. Applicant Richard Kokorian, Representative Margaret Bacon. Application for a new OOC for an expired one that was issued for a decade ago. In the wetland crossing. So do we have someone online or?
No, they requested to continue.
Oh, this one's a continued one. Okay.
So we need to, a motion to continue.
I make a motion to continue 42 Millville Street, DEP number 218-0865 until June 12th.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Let's vote. All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Bye-bye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Okay, going down the items. Next one's going to be equally fast. Request for determination of applicability, 133 North Avenue, Indiana 25-001. This has already been continued to June 12th, so we get to just pass over this one. The status in terms of what the timeline is the same as before. All right, additional topics for discussion. Agenda item 7, 31 Northbridge Street Enforcement Area. Review wetland resource area impact plan. It's required by the enforcement order issued February 13th, 2025.
And what's up, please?
Oh, wait for my computer to turn on. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Brian Dunn with MBL Land Development and Permitting. The office is at 5 Bristol Drive in Southeastern. I'm here on behalf of Jeff, who's sitting to my right, property owner. As you know, the commission issued an enforcement order on his property. We've had a couple of on-sites, one with your agent and yourself, Mr. Chairman. And then we had an on-site yesterday, prior to this lovely weather we had today. We walked the property, the entire lot. And there was, as you could see, path was very accessible from 31 Northbridge. And we looked at all the wetland flags, the crossings that have been there for quite some time. We discussed the historic nature of the path and the crossings that are there. We looked at some of the material of the piping that's had been used in over time, and probably dated material, corrugated metal pipe. Probably dates back to the 1950s. And we also showed you some historic photos of the path that really shows that the path was probably there as early as 1938. I think that Jeff has had some, landscaping guys there. He's also beautified some of the crossings. He's actually done some maintenance activity where some of the pipes over time were crushed and damaged, and over time just being old, replaced them. And I think there was at least one crossing that had a remnant of that corrugated metal pipe on one side and the ADS pipe on the other side. So leaving some of the remnants of the existing pipes that were there historically over time showed that it's been there for a while. So we were, Jeff hired us to do an existing condition survey plan, which we did. We submitted that to the Conservation Commission. We were asked yesterday to do a little bit more detailed survey. Also to locate some additional wetland flags to the back of the property in the area of where Jeff's property does come into 31 Northbridge. I do have 11 by 17s if you'd like, but I don't know if you have larger copies already.
Brian, you're talking about the area where all the mulch got put down?
Yes,
I didn't see any flags there yet, so it is
Yeah,
already
I-
flagged.
they were supposed to flag it after you guys left. I don't know, did you go back afterwards to the site?
Not on property. Permission.
Okay, the flag, yeah, so the flags, we discussed putting the flags while we were there. So Cameron from the Wetland Scientists company that we hired did put those flags. My surveyors were up there again today. They'll be again there tomorrow. getting some more of this detail. And then we'll be putting those wetland flags on the plan. And then we can start to quantify the alteration. But I want to make sure that, you know, we're quantifying the new alteration and not things that were from 1938 or things that were before the Wetland Protection Act in 1972. And knowing that, yes, we have a wetland resource area. There is an intermittent stream there. This is not a perennial stream as identified on the USGS quad maps. And we are in an area of limited flooding, 500-year floodplain, if I'm not mistaken. But I think that this is a use that probably could have been permitted years ago, where it was previously existing non-conforming, and also that the fact that it is for pedestrian use. So this is not a roadway. We're not trying to, you know, put a roadway in or put houses in it on the property. I think that Jeff is trying to just to beautify the lot, parcel of land the best he can, especially behind his house. The intent was for his mom, who lives at 31 now, where he bought the lot, to be able to walk back and forth. I think that there has been some improvements to the gravel path that had existed over time. And Jeff widened it, you know, probably a few feet here and there. But the intent with his activity out there was really to maintain what was already pre-existing and to be able to make it a safe and an easy way for his mom and for him to walk back and forth from each home. So I think we have a path of trying to address the enforcement order. What I'd like to do is continue moving forward, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, with identifying the alteration, the new alteration that we've seen in some of the wetland areas, especially, you know, at the back of Jeff's house. We have those two gated fences that you saw yesterday when we did the sidewalk, and then some of the other areas where we see piles of material and gravel as well as bark mulch, and assess that and come up with a plan to restore those temporarily altered areas of wetlands, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, question. Are you still saying that there's only 615 feet or whatever that purple
I think,
was of disturbance?
yeah, I think after
Are you still
yesterday's
staying with that?
meeting, yeah, so that's why this,
Down? 'Cause I saw a lot of disturbance when I was out there yesterday.
right, so that's why my surveyors were back there yesterday and will be here again tomorrow. To
I
identify.
think this needs to be burned and ripped up and redone again, honestly, after what I saw yesterday.
Okay, I was trying to answer the question, Mr. Chairman, through you. We are identifying those other areas that we saw yesterday and so we can put it on the plan and come back with a restoration plan for those areas.
Okay. So you're saying that there's the little purple area that's on this plan, and in addition, this plan does not yet show disturbances down at the far end.
That is correct. So when we did this originally survey, Mr. Chairman, you remember the enforcement order was issued in February.
Right.
So when we first, when we first went out there was snow on the ground. So after doing a few site visits and identifying the concerns of this commission through you and your agent, we understand where these other areas of alteration have occurred, and we're going to put them on the plans and then come up with a restoration plan.
Okay, I will now turn to Leah, and without using inflammatory and over-the-top language, you identify specific areas on this place where you believe that there has been
I showed,
would it be easier if you
Yeah.
put it up on the screen and go
Sure.
walk up there?
it'll be easy. I'd say all on with it.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question related to that?
Yeah.
What are the methods of identifying new versus old alterations?
So the method, if I through the chair,
Yeah.
really what, there's some areas that we saw that had some gravel pushed in that was new. I think Pete, your other member that who's not here, was identifying that those areas, Bob, and some of the other areas we thought towards the end and towards the beginning where there's some areas that have stockpiled materials. So based on what I discussed with the surveyors, I directed them to identify those areas that were newly, you can see that they're newly altered, so that we can locate those on the ground and then come up with an area of those newly temporary altered areas that are in the wetland system.
And that's for the piles, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, either
Just the
pot
piles?
or, excuse me, through the chair, either piles or where the machine pushed into the wetlands that we saw a little bit and was trying to make another path or put down some little bit of gravel material, altered some of the underbrush that we saw. So we understand where those areas are. We're just trying to survey them on the ground, want to put them on a plan, quantify them, and then come back to you with a restoration area plan for those areas.
So, for this part of what Lily is going to be pointing, you're going to be talking about stuff that was present before the activity on May 20th. So you're going to be pointing to places where you believe fill has not been historical, but has been done more recently. So take it away.
This is from yesterday.
Well, from yesterday, we know that there was significant fill happening in the area down by the other property. We're talking about the other areas along the long pathway where you believe that there was fill that has been done that would need to be restored or remediated.
Okay, and just to get my bearings here, this is about the area where that 615 feet that you were talking about before is.
Yes.
And then this is the dirt path,
Yes.
which is not a dirt path. I would say from here to about here has been disturbed. And that's a lot of disturbance. That's what I saw.
Okay, well, can you say specifically what you were seeing that
Sure.
you think it was disturbed?
Sure. I will start with from the bottom up. I saw a lot of fill right through the wetlands. I saw wetland plants on either side of the road. I saw trees that were damaged from equipment. I saw trees that were limbed up like lollipops to break in the wind in our next storm. And I saw fill that was brought in to plant trees that are not necessarily trees that would be growing in a wetland area. Throughout the whole top. Row.
Bob, you have other comments or observations?
Mr. Chairman, one of the questions I had when we were there is if the road was widened, will there be soil samples to see how deep it went before it was widened? I don't think, all right, let me rephrase that. It doesn't seem like the path was as wide as it is today years back.
Right, and I think I said that in my presentation. But I think that where the gravel path was historically, we've submitted photos that show it, you can see it on the photos as far back as 1938. So there had to have been some path with these crossings, with the wetlands on either side, that predated 1972 with the Wetland Protection Act, where this was a pre-existing non-conforming use. Okay, so that Jeff has the ability to maintain. I did say he expanded the path a little bit on either side, probably as he was going down, realized he needed a little bit more room, or there was areas that were, ditches from whatever that needed to be filled in so that the path could be smoothed out. It is gravel in nature, some of it in dirt, some of it gravel. There has been some expansion, like I said, But we also have to realize that this path was in existence. And it really was a maintenance activity with with a little bit of expansion. The other areas we're talking about, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, yes, we've seen areas that went into the wetlands that shouldn't have done. We recognize that. We want to quantify them, get them on a plan, and put together a restoration for those specific areas.
Susan, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I still don't know why, or you guys, you're referring to, there's one major stream that runs through it that is not perennial, as mapped by the USGS and also a mass mapper that runs through the property. And it's also a significant amount of wetlands. And number two, when I walked the property as well yesterday, I could see disturbance, everywhere, including the road, because I saw asphalt chunks, including that you looked like they were just dragged out into the, lateral and whatnot too as well. So I just don't know what kind of machine was used. I did see one on the way out, which is like maybe a small bulldozer or whatnot, but.
Yeah, I think it was that machine that was being used.
Oh, and the fresh marks on the trees, yeah.
Yeah, we saw the trees, that had some blazes on them from the machines and, so this is why we want to be able to quantify those issues. I mean, I think that, some of the plantings that Jeff has placed in there are wetland oriented, plants. Some of them are hemlocks that you saw, out there. And I think Cameron can, discuss that as well. But I think that the path to this, resolving this enforcement order is for us to finish our work, to quantify it. Isabella asked for 40 scale plans to be a little bit larger so we can see a little bit of more detail. We really do take pride in our survey, our engineering, as well as the documents that we place forward in every single commission. This is, probably one of the first times I've been in Mendon. I don't really get to Mendon that often, but thank you to Jeff, I'm here. But for the last 35 years, I've been all over Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine doing this in all different types of regulations. So we understand the Wetland Protection Act. We understand the activities that are exempt. We understand the activities that need to be permitted. Right now, we have an enforcement order. We have a path to address the enforcement order. We're here to listen to your concerns, to get them on paper, and to resolve this and get the wetlands in the areas that have been altered restored.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Okay, yeah.
Thank you. Permission
Like
to speak. No, just a couple of things. Well, we were there on yesterday. Isabella had mentioned that Jeff had asked if he could get some mulch put down in his yard. And Isabella was nice and we gave permission for that to be done. But when I walked to that last part of the property, there was new mulch spread all over the place. There were fresh marks on trees. And in our enforcement order, it does say that no work shall be done. I also saw fresh tractor marks where things had been pushed into piles. So I'm very concerned that there was work done in the resource area, even though our enforcement order said that no work should be done in the resource area. So that was very concerning. We're here to work with you, but I think what would have been a good way to start would have been for this plan to be more accurate.
Okay, hold on, Mr. Chairman, stop.
Yes.
I'm not going to be insulted by the documents that we have put forth. Our surveyors, our professional land surveyors, we are professional engineers. We do a good job of about addressing everything that needs to be on the plans. I'm not going to sit here and be insulted.
I will agree with you that.
I didn't say that the plan wasn't accurate. I said that the amount of the area that was disturbed is inaccurate.
But how you began
Yes.
before Mr. Chairman stepped in was insulting, and I didn't say anything.
I
that was
apologize for
wrong.
that, but I
And you should apologize.
just did.
The plan does show, for example, you were talking about the mounds on the side of the road with plants in them. Those are documented on here, the little black circles and things. So yes, they have spent a lot of time and effort with the plan. the difference of opinion that you're having with them is they are not recording areas on here as being disturbed because they believe they happened outside of, they are pre-existing uses. So do you have,
I believe that is inaccurate.
okay, so, and that's why so there's a difference of opinion and they're aware of that. And that's why I had you go up there and specifically say what you thought you saw that was different. Now that you've expressed those concerns, they'll be able to go back and decide what to do with that.
I just think we'd be getting through this quicker if we hadn't had all of these pit stops along the way.
Well, yes. Susan, do you have any other comments?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, if I can, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead.
to address Leah's question.
Yeah.
When Jeff called me about the bark mulch, I specifically said to him, my gut tells me, no, don't do anything at all. Do you remember this conversation? And he said, well, do you think I should just call Isabella? I said, call Isabella, but my gut to you is to stay put. Don't do anything until we address this. He did have a conversation or an email. I don't know exactly all of the details with Isabella, but I think that what ended up happening is he got the okay from her to do it. And then he said to the landscapers to do it, and they went a little bit over the top. A lot over.
Well, they didn't go a lot over the top. I told them to do it. I told them, as I spoke to Isabella, we're gonna do everything that was inside the fence. Why on Monday, they came back and did that upland area. I have no idea, but Isabella, I showed her my immediate reaction to the landscaper, and I chewed him out the other day. I said, you know, I have no idea why your guys decided to come and do that. I said, you guys really,
Threw gasoline on the fire.
and you compromised my integrity.
Yeah.
You know, and that's more important than anything. And I was really pissed off about it.
Okay,
But I don't know what else to say.
right, I
I
understand.
mean, and he says, well, I'll come down, I'll fix it, I'll do whatever
No,
to make it right for you. I said, look, you know
Not
what?
yet.
You already caused all the problems. I say, you already screwed me. So, you know, what am I gonna say or do?
So I'm the chair, I go last, so I have 4 points that I wanted to raise and discuss with you. The first one is, you said previously this evening that path expansion did happen, that in a couple of places you took a 6 or 8 foot path and it's now usually about 10 feet wide. So my question is, and this is for you to go back when you're coming back with the next round of documentation. Those areas on the path where it got widened, can they be identified, and because anything that you widened in the past couple of years is not historical in nature. And the question of whether widening the path that way was maintenance activity, which is allowable under the regulations, or no, you should have come to a permit and we would have probably said no because it's within the 25-foot no disturb. That's a conversation that we would have had. It's a conversation that we might want to have as we review things.
Okay, that's number one.
So 2, corrugated pipes and the nature of the pipes going underneath. On some of the streams, specifically the ones crossing the path, we can see that underneath the masonry structures that got installed, they're big, nice black pipes. However, on some of the intermittent streams, which are tributaries and coming into it, you can still see the smaller pipes under there. So one of the ways that we might need to look at in order to determine whether something was maintenance or not is to say, well, the pipe's a whole lot bigger now. Is that something that falls under maintenance, or was that done in order to extend the wall, extend the width of the roadway to put up those, the giant planter things that you were,
Right.
the nice masonry structures?
The only thing, to try to answer that question, Mr. Chairman, it's kind of like an unknown. So I don't know what the size of the pipes were.
Right.
Were they lengthened? I don't know. I can say that, you know, where historically we gave those photos to you and to Isabella at the meeting. It does show that the path was there. I know that a path, a walking path, a gravel path is an exempt activity under the act.
Yep.
Fencing, landscaping, you know, those kinds of things, even test pits are exempt activity. So when someone wants to beautify their property and they see a path and they're expanding it a little bit, so if we said it expanded 3 or 4 feet, we're still under the width of what a new path would have been for walking under the act, under the new act, not from 1972. I'm saying what's in place right now. So I think that we can look at those crossing areas and say, do we have an idea what the pipes were before? I don't know, but if there's a corrugated metal pipe on one side, we have a measurement and it's, I don't know, 10 inches, and there's a 15-inch on the other side. There's got to be some type of a coupling in the middle that the contractor put together to merge the two pipes together. So we can say that, okay, there's been alteration on this side of the 15-inch pipe in this kind of area, and put a square foot area on it to say that that's part of that wetland alteration. I think we can do that because I think it's going to be minimal in nature. But we can definitely quantify where those pipes change sizes.
Okay. Item number 3, the wood chip piles. When we went out on our April visit, there were a number of piles off, not on the path, but in the wetland areas and in the BV, the bordering areas, where we looked and said, yeah, someone chopped down a tree and turned it into a wood chip pile.
Right.
And at the time I asked you as well, if you spread that out, is that something that's allowable or not? If there had been a forestry plan or a tree harvesting plan, they would have said, no, you don't, you just take all of that debris out so that it doesn't stick and the wetland is filled. So again,
Correct.
That's something for you to research and think about. Do you add those piles on here? Are you able to come back and say is what you believe should be happening to
Right.
them?
And I think some of the piles, some of the areas that we came up with are those wood chip piles. And I think that also that, excuse me, I'm speaking.
Well, wait until.
So some of those wood chip piles were discussed during our initial meeting with you, Mr. Chairman, and Isabella, where Jeff was saying that he had chipped the trees that had already fallen down, and it was a pruning type of a activity, which is also an exempt activity under the act.
Okay.
So we can quantify those things, and I think that probably, not with a machine, maybe with handwork, can shovel and with hands move the piles out into the wetlands and let them be.
Yep.
And then come up with a planting plan to restore where those piles of chips have been stored.
Okay. What was your question about the
Are we,
large pile?
are we considering that large pile that's probably about 20, 30 yards of rock and I don't know, there's a huge pile there of rocks and dirt. Are we considering that?
Which part is the lot?
It's on the left-hand side, probably about a third of the way up.
Yeah, we've located that on the plan already.
Is that included?
If it's in the wetland system, it'll be part of the quantification. So right here, it's actually right at the front. It's in the middle of the,
Yes.
it's right in the middle of the path.
That is one of the things I would expect to be updated because there were fresh tracks. There was dirt that had been piled up probably on Monday or Tuesday that had not yet been rained on. So pictures of that so that it was quite clear that that pile had been disturbed, work had been done on that since the April visit.
Okay.
Which pile are you talking?
He's talking about these two piles right here.
There's been no work done on it.
When we first went in.
No work whatsoever has been done on
Okay,
anything else, but by anyone that I know of. Now, there could be trespassers on the property, but there is nobody, there's been trespassers on the property, but there has been nobody that's been authorized by me, nobody that's been hired by me, nobody whatsoever has been told to touch anything in those piles.
Okay.
The only thing that has been done on that property is I called Isabella
Okay.
and I asked them if I could have mulch dumped in the back.
Okay.
And I only did that so that I could put mulch in my property.
Right.
Within the fence. But there's been absolutely no activity whatsoever done on this property since you issued that EO.
All right, well, we have the photographic evidence, and we can discuss what that says at some point.
Just a follow-up, do we have, that can't be spread out right into the wetlands? That's not something they could spread out into the wetland.
No, he could actually move it back into his yard if he wanted to, outside of a buffer zone.
My fourth point is going to be the one I'm most confused on. Earlier in your presentation tonight, you said that this was a gravel path for walking on and was not a roadway. Unfortunately, on May 20th, this was used as a roadway. Authorized a contractor to drive on it and use it as a roadway. So I don't think in the future you should say that this is not a roadway if in the past you used it as a roadway and in the future you might in order to gain access to the back of your property. My other thing that I'm personally irritated on is the use of that path as a roadway did cause damage to a number of trees. You could see the gouges where someone was careless with their heavy machinery and they ripped the bark off, they got down to the caddying part of the tree. And that's probably going to be it's going to probably die because there's, that particular tree had previously been damaged, but now there's a much bigger gouge on the bottom. So I think you should consider what your future statements are going to be about whether this is a roadway suitable for heavy machinery or not, or whether you are going to plan on making it back just for pedestrian use. Any further comments? If not,
I have some.
okay, yep.
I'll second that. I believe this needs to be called a road. As Carl said, I've heard Jeff say multiple times, the reason he built the road partially is to access the back of 9 Forest Park Drive for landscaping, since he has a pool and other stone steps that he can't bring landscaping machinery to the back. I also think, a pedestrian walkway that might be exempt in the Wetland Protection Act outside of the 50-foot buffer zone and outside of our no disturb and 50-foot setbacks in the Mendon Wetlands bylaw would not approve a gravel road crossing wetlands. Maybe we would permit a bridge and a walking path. We don't typically permit. We have never permitted a path with culverts 12 feet wide. We have no ADA paths in Mendon. This isn't something we would permit, especially not for public use, private use. I want to clarify that I gave verbal permission to Jeff last week on phone when he called me to do landscaping on 9 Forest Park Drive. And that property line is the stone wall. It's not the fence. Jeff and I talked about, and I went out on a limb doing it without speaking with the commission, and I apologize for that. I got calls from neighbors saying there was work happening, and I said I gave the permission, and you did do work in the wetland resource areas. So I am very upset about that. But my other main point about this now being a road and may have been historically a path is that those photos show perhaps a path. Aerial images show perhaps a walking path with a couple of bridges. I see no evidence of culverts anywhere. And there is one metal corrugated pipe, but I still don't see that even in aerial images, and I will go through them. I've lost my train of thought, so I'll just go through the photos. These are flashing back from 2020, which is after ownership, first year. Oh, my other point was on the site walk, Jeff clarified that when he bought the property, the previous owner had worked for a telephone company and that there were telephone poles laid down, which may have been acting as a bridge. And, way back, people drove through streams, they filled streams with gravel and drove through them as fords, not culverted systems, not culverted road crossings. And
And so what may have been a walking path with telephone poles is now upgraded to a 20-foot long culvert.
The telephone poles are over the rotted culverts.
Okay. And I'll also note, it may be an intermittent stream, but it is a cold water fishery, this main part of the stream. And so this is 2020, and this is looking at, if you're looking on the plan, not the first culvert crossing, but the second and third culvert crossings. This is the main one with the large masonry. And so
Use the mouse to go over the part that.
So here is the main crossing with the large abutments. And here is what I believe to be a small bridge. And that's small enough for a pedestrian to cross.
You expand on that?
And here's the location of that second one, and the upstream would be the metal corrugated pipe. And now in 2025, it looks like that. And that is clearly two wetland crossings, stream crossings, much larger. And here's the second one. And this is the one with the metal corrugated pipe. And I don't see that in this photo. Second location.
Before you continue, if you don't have access to Near Map, Isabella will be able to provide these for you.
I've provided these
Yeah,
photos.
we have these photos.
Okay.
Here's the second point, which also, here's the area that's been landscaped with trees. And you can see the path. You know, I don't see the road. I see potentially, you could say you walk through the woods. I don't see a road.
I don't even know where you are.
I'm a little bit further up from that first crossing. You have a few of the bushes up above there.
Can you go back to that? I think those are the green bushes with the rhododendrons.
What's this right here? Is that's it?
That is the road,
Right, okay.
And what year is that?
2020. This is this April. Again, a very large wetland system. With the road, now in 2025. And here you can see, you know, other,
It does look to be improved.
another large crossing. And then we get to the back of the property. You know, a very large wetland system. And so here's the stone wall, that is the 9 Forest Park property line, and then the fence.
2020.
2020 and today. And so I want to know the amount of fill that was brought in to build this road. I mean, I can go on your map and we can flip through other years, but this is, you know, 2020 is 2 years into ownership, not that much alteration. And then today, 2025, April. The other point I do want to talk about is, you know, cutting trees, vista pruning is allowed outside of the 50-foot buffer zone, not in a wetland. You can't trim trees, you can't take limbs down, you can't take out fallen trees and stumps, and, you know, you can't clean up a wetland. You can clean up the buffer zone, maybe outside of the 50-foot, maybe in the 25 to 0 feet, not in the wetland. I finished.
Okay. So you've now heard our concerns on what you will come back with the next set of paperwork for us. Now switch to saying what happened on May 20th with the extra fill being done in. Question that the commission would need to discuss is, do we want you to take all of that stuff out immediately, or do we wait until you come back with additional work? So
The mulch.
basically everything on the wrong side of the stone wall. We want that all the way before we have any further discussion on the property? Or do we have them say, no, it's safer to just leave it there and then have them come back with the plan?
I'm thinking it's safer to leave it there because we're gonna be going into the wetlands again, with truck and shovels and all kinds of equipment to remove that mulch.
Okay, Susan?
I'll agree with, Leah.
Barb?
I agree. I think that we should know what we're working with before we do work
Make a
that
decision.
maybe move to a different location.
Okay. So, I have no opinion one way or the other, but that's the consensus of the other members who are here. So the expectation is that we would not have you do any further work there. So Isabella, can you say specifically what you're expecting the next piece of paper to be coming in to be?
I want the scaled site plan that is detailed. That shows all wetland resource areas and impacts. I'm also interested in potentially having the bank resource area flagged as well as the BBW. And I think the plan should be 1 inch equals 40, which is actually in the enforcement order, not more than 1 inch equals 40. And the second part is the square footage calculation of any and all impacts to identified resource areas, specifically including but not limited to square footage of BBW, intermittent streams, and buffer zones. I'll also add that since, the bordering land subject to flooding and bank should be calculated as well. And I would hope to see that by the next meeting.
So you were reading that off, so you'll be able to give them that in writing?
He has it.
You have that already, okay.
I think, well, a couple of things. And then I know Cameron's on the call, but an intermittent stream does not have bank. If it had bank, it would be riverfront.
We can certainly flag the bank of the intermittent stream. It does have a bank. You're right, Brian. There is no riverfront area associated with that stream. But there are banks. I believe the survey crew did locate the banks and put them on the plan. They weren't, flags weren't hung, but they were obvious enough in the field for the survey crew to pick those up.
Not technical enough to have an opinion.
Yeah, so we located those intermittent streams as they came into the culverts.
Right.
Where they came, where they came in and out. So we've located those banks, and that's what we show on the plan. But Cameron in his office did not put a flag, bank 1, bank 2, bank 3 for us to locate.
Mr. Chairman, so bank is a regulated resource area that has its own performance standards beside BBW. So if we're looking at alteration of bank for a 10-foot culvert, you're looking at bank impacts on both sides of the culvert. And that's something that we are going to need to evaluate based on the site plan and what we can potentially determine is permittable or not.
Does the regulation here, whether it's an intermittent or
Both intermittent streams and perennial streams have bank.
Okay, so I'll leave it.
Cameron agreed with me.
Right, so we can quantify that.
Right.
And I said that earlier,
Okay.
that we would do that.
Okay.
I think we're just beating a dead horse right now, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion, Mr. Chairman? The new gate that's clearly in the path of a wetland. Like when we got over to the old gate, just widen the old gate. Which didn't be on the black chain link fence. There's two gates. Sure, that gate's been there since 2008.
We've been there.
They've been there forever. Those gates were not put in. When I told you that there was wood stacked there. Yeah. I had the fence put in 2008. Okay. And then my landscape guy asked me if I could put another gate in there. I'm not sure I did 2008. Well, I'm just saying that you're going. Just saying, 17 years old, that gate. 17 years old.
Did the landscaper know it was a wetland?
I'm sure that the landscaper did not know anything about wetlands. think that's a safe statement to say yes.
Any further discussion?
When is the next meeting, Mr. Chairman?
No,
June 12th.
we're not able to.
And that's 3 weeks.
I think we'll work on it. I want to see in the plan, the rebuttal of the main, I can't tell it from this map, but the main stream, the biggest one is definitely, for my geological and hydrogeologic experience, is definitely a perennial stream, and as mapped by Mass Mapper and the USGS. So I just wondering what the groundwork for not calling it what it is. So you can just get back to
Yeah, so because when you look at the
you know, it's like,
current USGS mapping, it's dashed. It's a dashed blue line.
it's not.
Mass Mapper isn't 100% up.
No, but I'm looking at, I just looked at it 2 seconds ago. I'll send it around. It's not.
If you-
Okay,
whatever you
I
want.
looked at the current USGS map before I came here. It's definitely dashed.
Okay, well, if you can send each other
Yeah, so,
URLs.
and we'll put together all the information you need to verify what
I
we're
was just
saying, what we're
wondering
doing.
who has wherewithal of renaming something that's been named to that since like late 1800s. I'm in the Hollis Harbor Libraries right now. And I saw it, so.
Okay.
I'll have to download it.
Okay. Any further questions? I believe we would be all set to have you, Rob, present us with some information and then come back for our meeting in 3 weeks.
Excellent.
Right, we move on to agenda item number 8, 23 Cape Road enforcement order. Review report from Deshang of Claw Engineering about resource area impacts and restoration recommendations. I see Connor Down and Deshang on the call.
Yes. You can hear me?
Yep, and I see
Yep.
other people from site management. So Deshang, why don't you
Yes.
start?
All right. So after since commission site visit with the applicants and myself, so I put some thought on it. This and also had a phone conversation with applicants, wetland scientist Danwell, and I have a couple of logistic things would like to discuss with the commission. So after I did compile, let me see if I can share I haven't finished my report. I will explain why there's some things we need to probably discuss. Let me see if I can share. I'll share my. All right.
Have you shared this with Arco Site Management, or are they seeing it for the first time?
The first time, so I think to discuss the concerns, it's the first time we discussed about timing, when to restore it, and then how to restore it, and about how to deal with the wetlands, the floodplain issue, because that was the first time we had discussed it at the site visit, which was not fully investigated as far as how to restore. So if you're looking at the site, it's basically coming down here. This is a 0.2. So this is a very, very rough location. So it's not real. And so based on I review all my about 26 sampling points for the 3 locations. So probably average, we get like 6 inches of sediment deposit, especially in the area 2 and area 3 over here. So area 1 downstream of the old 4 of the subsurface stormwater management is very minimal, and they already vacuumed it out based on our site visit. So the two major area is area 2 and area 3. So for the ecological and the wetland function restoration, it's a little bit, I'm not saying easier, so it still need to take into consideration the timing, because of we know there's places with the water flow, and so we discussed it with hand and shovel and a vacuum, but how to get to it, we already walked into it, so we don't want to have a collateral damage or making things worse. So it means the timing is very important. So from that perspective, I think that we need to do it in the drier weather. So that's one thing we need to to consider the methodology. So for the wetland, for the floodplain restoration, we need to identify how to compensate it. To remove all the historic sediment deposit, it may not be the best way to do. So since it's going to destroy a lot of well-established vegetation. So I was thinking of discuss with Dan is to find an area with a minimal vegetation, so we can produce. I intended to do it in the relatively upgradient end of it. So because you can excavate it down to compensate for the elevation equivalent storage, like in over here or somewhere, rather than the lower section. So, but we do need to identify a proper area for calculated storage. So field. So right now we don't really field evaluated, but I really don't have exactly how big of an area. So we may have to survey. So it's probably the applicant surveyor can pick up the my evaluation spot, which almost I hang the flags and put the stakes in the ground. I hope most of them should be there since it's relatively recent thing. So based on those sampling point, I may be able to mapping it out based on the depths of the sediment thickness and for the two major area, so that we can get the flood storage loss, and then to coming up compensatory storage. So that's the ones that I would like to discuss and to see what the commission would advise, and to moving forward to complete our final recommendation. So, and I also welcome the applicants so I told Dan to talk to their team to see if they have any better idea from the timing and methodology to clean it up. And so we also discussed for the ecological restoration is any place without significant vegetation, we can remove all the sediment like we see over there in that wetland pool. So we see pretty much like a low barren sediment. There's not much vegetation. And in the 0.3 area, also have some area we don't have much of vegetation. So to remove those silt will help and promote growth of a vegetation. If we don't take that out, especially the median sand, is probably going to be barren for quite a while. So that's the major issue I'm thinking about, and why I'm compiled sort of share with you is, let me see, I have historic photos I did look at. So it seems like from the historic photo I can see it's the major disturbance is like, in, as the chairman pointed out, in the field, but I'd be able to identify it's like around year 2000. I see the areas almost denuded. So, and then another significant disturbance prior to the current construction is 2017, no, 2020. So you can see this areas, you almost can see the sediment movement in this area, like a strict. So that's a two major land disturbance. I'm going to put in the report, so for reference. So consider what are.
For a second, we leave it on this one.
Sure.
What happened in 2020 is we got complaint from the neighbors that they had brown silt in their land, and we immediately called up the solar farm people and said, "Hey, what happened?" The solar farm people sent up a drone and said, "See, we don't have any fill coming. We don't have any sediment coming downstream from us, but gosh, the photos show this. The parcel next door has now got brown, looking exactly the same color as the silt." And that's when we went and talked to the previous owner about it. That led to us going out and working with them in 2020 on remediation.
I see. So that seems like a very consistent with what we see in the field. So you can see the two major area. So one is coming down, wash it into this area, and then the other one is coming down, washed into into this area. So that's a one. I think it's so from the photo, it is consistent. So. So then the next, basically, so we discussed all that, and so I think so that the two major things. One is for restoring the function of that. It's kind of intermittent stream right now. So coming down right now in the place because of the siltation is kind of blocked at the channel going to the wetland complex over here. They kind of like in detoured the stream going into offside down gradient of the solar panel. So that one should be relatively easy. We already discussed a good amount in the field. So we need to block and probably dig in the channel out near the plot 9 and 10 area so that the water can go back to the old channel and into the pool area where the sediment deposit can be cleaned out and form some kind of function, probably restore the pool to some degree. So that part we probably can easily do. And in the 0.2 area, so that wetland complex, we can see like 4 to 10 inches of sediment over there, but near the silt fence area, that median sand deposit also 7 to 10 inches. That have some vegetation, but there's no trees. So that's I'm thinking of maybe we can use that to digging out a flood compensatory storage, and then at the same time maybe you can create in. I don't know whether we can create a vernal pool, but I'm pretty sure it will function as a vernal pool based on what we see. The old Stillen pool from the stormwater management area is already have a tadpoles in it, so that's ecological function and the flood plan. So that's what I have in mind, and so that's why I'm trying to be here to brief the commission, and then since you all see that in the field, and to finalize it, as I said, to maybe we need to have this surveyor from the applicant team to pick up those sampling points and put on the plan. We can get a more quantified area and the volume for the flood storage.
Not that square kind of pond.
Louder.
Was that kind of square pond he's talking about? Over the back?
What would your artificial vernal pool look like?
Well, lots of actual vernal pools are created, by humans' activity, and you can see even in soil test pit, they can make it as a function, even as small as like probably 5 feet by 10 feet. You can have a vernal pool function. I'm sure we are going to be a little bit bigger than that, based on just a quick assessment of the area of the sediment deposit.
Jim, I have a question. Shang, it sounds like you might be leaning towards some vacuuming and removing of the heaviest of soils in the number 2 area and the number
3.
number 3 area, maybe
Right.
do some replication somewhere and not disturb it to create more problem.
That's correct. That's my leaning toward that strategy. And given some areas really have a very good dense vegetation. So if you later on, if you look in my logs, I put in every plot sampled. I will indicating if there the vegetation is sparse or it's a dense. So the vegetation, if it's a dense, I think it will cause more damage if we, like get a excavator taking everything out. So, but if we can restore the function, the major function of it, like a stream, pool, also indicated there's a pool and a channel function. So if we restore that and then get the flood storage compensated, then we probably achieve the 3 major resource function.
Right, you're looking to regain the square footage of wetland while also bringing the function of some compromised area back.
Right, for the flood storage. But most of the area is still wetlands. So it's most of the deposit is kind of in the flagged wetlands, except probably area 2. There's some probably upland island there, over there. So it's more clean up the mineral sediment in the places that given the time for even 7 today is already 8 7. So the 2, so it's like 20 years ago. So they still don't have much of vegetation. So it means those mineral soils is probably get to be removed to allow those organic surface to promote the vegetation growth. So that's one of the major function I'm thinking of the mitigation. And then the channel, restore the channel, which is originally feeding down to from the upstream runoff to the downstream. And then the third is since we are in the flood plain, some of the areas will need for flood storage.
And you want to do the replication upland as opposed to down low.
That's correct. Yeah, I think it's better in the upper area, which is probably the construction will be a little bit easier because it's not it's not as wet. You will get the machine to disturb, and if you have a rain or will wash out, so that it will minimize that risk.
Good question.
Oh, yeah.
Shane, I like your plans. Number 1, that sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah, we will materialize it. So yeah, I think we put some good thought, and Dan is a very experienced expert in that too. So 2 of us had some phone conversation. In general, he is in line with it, but I don't know whether after he talked to his team from the methodology or some other perspectives, I would be happy to incorporate anything they feel have a better. So I know wetlands, I know hydrology, but I don't want to pretend I'm a contractor. So obviously we listened to their contractor, Kevin. So on the side, he said, oh, we can vacuum those out. I said, oh yeah, that's a great idea, do it. So they did right away, and we went back follow with the rain, so that area was clean. So I think that they did a good job in that perspective. So I don't want to, I know this things is a good to some degree. It's a historic, but I think if they can do it, I think it's a good deeds for some mitigation. They did probably turbidity impact flushed it out into the stream. So that one was in the last December. So, but we didn't find much of settled sediment deposit.
My question is, do we feel like the site is buttoned up enough now that we're not gonna have any more events flowing?
It's been that way since February, since March, February.
Well, there
March.
were a few things while we were there that were a little, that needed to be buttoned up.
Yeah, they did. I'm going to send out a report. So we did inspection Saturday. So they did add in, check them, crush just like, stone berms around the northern swale where the old trap B coming in. And so they cleaned out the silt in that pool in front of the sediment silt fence downstream of the old fall. The water quality in the trap A used to be like the one when I was there right after the paving was over 800, but this time we tested is only like about 40. So that's almost just the water even in that trap A was in compliance. So that was significant improvements. I don't know how much rain we are going to have with the tonight. So probably tomorrow we're going to just check to make sure with all the rains. I think if we get 3 inches, that's probably is going to be the highest rain amount since we come into the site.
Yeah. Dan, are you okay with all of these
Hey, you're stealing my thunder.
observations?
Was that directed to me?
You or anyone from
Yeah.
from Arco Site Management, do you?
Yeah,
You're
okay.
What Deshane's proposal?
Yeah,
Perhaps.
so I agree with the observations. I guess what I am struggling with is the exact methods, as those of you who are out there can tell, you can't just give a list to somebody and say, do these 3 steps and then be done with it. There's got to be some wiggle room for, interpreting what you're seeing as the work's being done. It's as you remove some sediment, you can't just necessarily stake out a rectangle and say, clear the sediment out from here, and then you have to get so many cubic feet of it, and that's what we're requiring. I think Commission, if I think Desheng would agree, there's got to be some, possibility that it's kind of on the fly. These decisions can't all be made in advance. Blue Water can't just necessarily commit to doing exactly all the certain steps. So I just wanted to bring that point up. I think my assumption was that I would be present for at least some of this work to kind of guide whoever's doing the work. So if there's some flexibility in kind of, the general concept is remove the sediment from these areas, don't damage the existing vegetation, and, make some decisions on the fly of whether it's been done sufficiently. I guess that's one topic I wanted to bring up.
Yes, I would agree. Yes. So in the restoration plan, normally when this kind of things happen, especially inside of the resource area, I don't think you can just tell a contractor to go ahead and do it without the supervision of a wetland scientist or ecological background engineer there to to make sure things are done properly. So, so even though we have those detailed soil logs, but it's still compared with the complex over there. So 26 was the one I did the best I can. So we do, Dan, as I just suggested, we do need to have the surveying locations probably put on the plan. Then we probably can get a little bit better at this, even a sketch it out restoration area better. Right now, so we just say area 2, area 3, but there's no actual like a blueprint for a contractor to and for you and me to be agreed on something that this we can, prior to the starting of the work, we will require some kind of pre-meeting, just almost like in for any other construction. This is probably a little bit more important and sensitive compared with the upland construction meeting. See, based on the site condition, do we need even thinking about temporary sediment control waters set up, and when you are done, when things are established and the vegetation monitor growing back and have to remove it. So because it's in the wetlands, we definitely don't want those netting thin or plastic left in the wetlands. So yeah, those things I need to work it out in my recommendation. And if you can, working with your surveyor to picking up those sampling or testing plot locations and to put on the plan, scale the plan. Maybe each area have like a 140 scale plan to show that. So to get me a PDF. That's why I say we need to take a little bit time to work that out.
Deshang, I'm sorry. If I could share my screen quickly, I just wanted to show you.
Okay, sure. Let me stop my. Okay, go ahead.
So I created this map. This is based on 2023 aerials, but so this shows the two areas. I have different, I'll try to correspond the numbers with what you're showing, but from Blue Water's perspective, they've already, keep in mind, we can all agree this was done before they even, got involved. And to have a surveyor, the costs are just going up and up. And so could we try to just use something like this where it's, we can agree more or less where these areas are without having them have to be actually surveyed on a plan. And, we can certainly put flags in the field that kind of define the limits of them. But I think, I think in fairness to Blue Water, to try to limit some of their additional costs moving forward would be appreciated. And I think, some kind of a map like this that we could create without needing the detailed survey would be a good start.
Yeah, one thing I would accept is if you do like a GPS kind of coordinates and then just putting on the GIS map, I think that would probably good enough from my perspective.
Okay.
Is that doable? So if you can, then I will be more comfortable because you know where my soil test pit I marked, and if you go there, you already know it. If you want to do that way, and I think so. Just if it's a commission, so I know GPS these days is getting, lots of surveyors even use GPS. And I should be okay. And based on what you mark and I mark was I didn't use GPS. I'm just based on my kind of like in memory. So marked into a very similar. So.
All right.
Hey guys.
Well,
can you hear me? This is Connor Downey from Blue Water.
Hello.
Hey, how's everyone doing? Hey, I just wanted to weigh in from the Blue Water side. I think we are in agreement. I'll speak on behalf of Blue Water, in agreement with DeShank's findings in general, on board to restore the functionality of the stream, on board to do some additional volume. Sounds like a little bit of gradient from the actual wetland to replace that volume. I think the one thing that is still a little unclear. I mean, it sounds like based on DeShang's and Dan's findings out on site that there are certain areas of the wetlands that would do more damage going in and trying to fix than just leaving. And then there's some areas that you are proposing to actually go in and remove the sill. If we could get some kind of just scope that everyone can agree on, and it sounds like this plan might be the, I'll say, roadmap to that. I think we can all agree this has gone on long enough. So I think we'd all like to get to a solution that works for everyone here, and we're obviously, playing along, trying to make everyone happy. So.
Yep. Okay. We do have another group of people on for our next agenda item. So I'll ask DeShang 2 questions. The first, when do you expect to have the next piece of paper for us to look at?
So Dan, have you already done the GIS? So like GPS, GIS, sorry. So you use a handheld GIS to pick up those testing locations, put on, if you can get.
No, we have not, and DeShang, okay. I can get with Tom Simone here. We just got to get with Pierce, the site work contractor, and figure out when that can be done. I wouldn't imagine it would be too far out in the future, but we'd have to get with you offline here.
Yeah, so that's one thing I also try to ask it. So since this thing looks like we will need to do it in a little bit drier weather, so I would like to get an idea from Aecon and Blue Water, what's your schedule? So I'm thinking of this things probably need to be done. Given the weather we have, the weather pattern with so much rain, we definitely have to wait a little bit. So it's not going to be a good weather like we had in the last couple of weeks. So likely will be probably into July or something, so at least from what I can see. And then that will play it out. So with that said, for the restoration and mitigation work, so it means we need to get the field surveying work, I'm saying not necessarily by a surveyor, but at this to a certain accuracy, we can get the volume calculated out. So I would think we will get some update, not necessary to have a meeting for the June 1st meeting. Hopefully we can have that, but I'm not sure given we still have that work to finish. So probably the second meeting in June will be a safer bet to get the whole thing completed. I like to get the logistic when the commission is comfortable. I want to make sure the contract side and will agree, and then can implement it comfortably. So with mutual agreement. Definitely don't want to push into do in the wrong way, and the wrong time.
Let me try and condense that into a sentence. You are expecting that by our second meeting in June, you will be coming to us with a plan that ARCO and Blue Water have signed off and are in agreement with.
To some degree, yeah, with them. So we like to have some walking back and forth to get an agreement with the scope of work, probably in the field even. So after we surveyed it, it still have to be kind of, as Dan said, it's almost like an art. I did those samples, but I couldn't get the 100%.
Interests of time. If you and ARCO, Blue Water, are having disagreements on what should be done or how expensive it will be or whatnot, please come back and schedule with Isabella time for us to come to an earlier meeting so that we can hash out any differences of opinion.
Yeah, that's a very good recommendation. So
otherwise we won't expect people back until the second meeting in June. And my other point is, if you need further input from the commission, you can come back and ask us questions without having to bring in the Blue Water team. If you just need more guidance and feedback from us.
Sure, I will get, I will keep Isabella posted on my end as far as how I'm working out with the applicant team. If it's something I feel I need to consult the commission for guidance, I definitely will not hesitate.
Bob, do you still need to ask a question?
Sean, was there any more talks about what was gonna be done with that, raw banking about the trailer parking?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. At the very end of it, Bob and I was there talking to them. We noticed in the southeast corner, just the down gradient of that sports field, there was like in exposed steep bank, was like in a concern. I'm definitely will see a concern. It marked as all side of the limit of work, but it's clearly not stable. And we kind of thinking they need to stabilize it, and could be a simple riprap with a fill fabric underlying riprap or something, vegetated ground cover. So I think the applicant was we commented on at the meeting, and so Dan, do you have any update on that? And so maybe we can incorporate into some kind of decision.
I'm not aware of that. Sean, do you have any?
Are we talking about how the watershed off the soccer field eroding the
yes
the
right.
embankment?
Yeah, I know where it's being brought up.
Because you have that catch basin right there that then it goes into, what is it, number 71?
Yeah, definitely it's not a good thing to leave that like in. I know it may be outside of. I don't have the exact record if that is due to the excavation or it's original like that, but it definitely make no sense to leave that exposed steep slope vulnerable for future erosion and to get sediment and erosion onto your parking and then get into catch basin and get into your subsurface. Drainage system, clog it up and wash it out. So because if turbidity showed up and the people pick it up and report it, then it probably costs much more to clean everything subsurface.
Got a gavel, don't make me use it. Any further discussion before we move on to the next agenda item? Great. Well, my expectation is that Deshang, now that you've reminded him of this, will go and work with site management on coming up with a response.
Yes, we'll do.
Thank you for coming, and we will schedule a block of time for the second meeting in June then.
Okay, great. Thank you. We'll keep you posted. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
We'll now move from the enforcement part of our responsibilities to the conservation parts of our responsibilities. Agenda item 9, Oak and Wall Preserve. Review and accept the conservation restriction for 46 Thayer Road. This has been a work in progress since like February with multiple drafts and revisions going back between the state, Metacomet, land use or CPC and Mazar. I came into it last week and made a couple of comments. With my usual hit rate, 1 out of the 5 was, oh yeah, that's a good point. The other ones were, yep, we've got that feedback from everybody else, but the state isn't going to change. So, Anne, are you going to make the opening presentation, or Lisa?
I don't know, Lisa. Well, it's the conservation. No, you're
muted at the moment.
Yeah, you're muted. This is the am I echoey?
Not really.
I'm sorry. There I go.
There we go.
That's working.
Is there still an echo?
They're doing new speakers. They're testing new speakers here, so if you are getting feedback, I'm sorry.
No, I think it's okay now. But
Good evening, everyone. Chairman, this is Lisa Mozinski from the Metacomet Land Trust, and it's a pleasure to be here again with another conservation project. So tonight it's the property on Thayer Road, nearly 200 acres of prime habitat for a protected species. And you have had, as the chairman mentioned, a copy of the conservation restriction for your review because the state requires the commission and the Board of Selectmen to sign off on the project. And as I'm sure you know, the town is purchasing the conservation restriction. There's a terrific bundle of resources that have come together, and the town and Metacomet will co-hold the restriction, which means we basically have an equal partnership in making sure that the property is protected as outlined in the restriction in perpetuity. So it's been a pleasure to work with Anne and other members of the conservation community in bringing this together, and we're here tonight to answer some questions and hopefully get the commission's approval to move forward.
Yeah, this CR is much more detailed and lawyerly legalistic than the previous ones, but in part that is because there are so many sources of funding going into this.
That's correct.
So everybody who is helping to fund this has their own particular interests and preservation goals, and the document is capturing all of them. So
that's including the Department of Endangered Species and Natural Heritage.
Yeah, and Leah, it explicitly says in the CR restriction that we should not talk about what the endangered species are.
Listen, I'm ready to make a motion. You had me at hello.
So
Endangered species.
So if there's no other questions or comments, we can get moving.
I move to accept the conservation restriction for the Oak and Wall Farm Preserve contingent upon town council's approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion other than saying hello? All right. All in voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Well, that was a lot quicker than the last one.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry to make you wait this long, but you got to see all of the other stuff in town we're having to deal with.
It was quite an education. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
You as well.
Yep. Agenda item 10, 7 Park Street enforcement order. Review placement fill of large boulders in buffer zone. We're expecting an NOI for next week.
So I've been speaking with Mark Allen. He's the hired engineer. There's another plan in front of you. They've come back with a request. I guess James Quirk is in a position to receive the boulders he wants to use. So they're making a request to place the red section with the same type of large boulders that were placed in the green area that they received the EO for. They are intending to submit the NOI. They worked very quickly on it to get it in next Thursday so it can be on the June 12th meeting. It's going to be an NOI for a retaining wall. I think they must be requesting a waiver of the bylaw to build it. It's their intention, from what I can understand, is that they want to build the retaining wall up here on this steep slope because they want to exaggerate and enlarge the size of this property that has for years, in my understanding, for years has been unable to be sold or built upon because of the size. So they're expecting by building a retaining wall, they may add 5 feet or so to the property. And so I'm expecting the NOI just for a retaining wall, not any sort of commercial use, but I'm not entirely sure what is being submitted. So they are asking that they can receive the red area in the meantime, understanding that they are an EO and no other machinery before an order of conditions is received. Following that, you can see that there is a pre-existing silt fence. I understand some point prior to me starting, they did do work on the slope after discussion with the commission, not needing a permit. So, you know, I don't historically quite know what's happened, but I know there has been work before that the silt fence is up. I'll say the old Route 16 road bed is asphalt, so it's not damaging vegetation per se. And nothing is getting up that steep slope, so it's not blocking animals necessarily.
Are they trying to move the green rock to where the red is?
No, they want a second load of rocks.
Are they
Second delivery.
intending on digging into the bank and placing them
I have no
in
idea.
the bank?
We'll have to wait till we get the NOI submission.
And I think, you know, it is an EO if the NOI is not, you know, this isn't permission for the rock to be where it is by allowing them to put it there.
So they're
That's not
asking
their-
us what?
Don't they just put it on top?
Because then they would have to load it up and drive it back around down to the bottom because they're working from the bottom.
Are they gonna do more work? Is that what you're saying? They wanna put more?
They
rocks
want,
before
they
it-
want, they're asking permission to put rocks where the red circle is. In the meantime, because he has access to free rock, and if he loses the ability to accept it, he may not be in a financial position to buy it in the future.
Okay.
But they are not proposing they're not proposing besides the rock truck delivery. No further work with heavy machinery, because they understand they're under an enforcement order.
And is that still in the buffer?
It's further than this green, that here's the wetland line.
Okay.
So we're in the 50 partially right here. And the rest is outside of the 50.
What does your gut say?
And there is an EO. And I think the retaining wall appears to be that it will be outside of the 50 if it's being built up here. And, you know, potentially maybe just outside of the 50. I think, you know, before the EO, they weren't gonna get the NOI until the fall, so there is progress in that aspect, that they understand they need to get an NOI with an order of conditions.
Are they putting the rock right on Nipmuc Drive? Where's the rock being stored, I guess, is the question I'm asking. Because Nipmuc Drive
Oh,
is
this is,
right aside of the wet.
oh, here's Nipmuc. And here is Park Street. This is the old Route 16 discontinued route.
This
Okay,
is
so
that's
that's
16 right here.
It's parallel to, there's a chain link fence and gate, and you look down and that's the old road bed, and it's the huge slope on the side
Right.
there.
Right.
It's not Nipmuc Drive.
So where in
The
here?
gate is here. I can pull up GIS if you want that.
So my question is, where's the wetland border in the 25, 50, 100?
The wetland flags are the typical green hatches,
Okay, so that's along here.
and the 50-foot is this first line, so the 25 would be halfway.
Okay,
We have
so
the 50 and 100-foot.
so they have, the green stuff is, they've already got boulders in the 25-foot area, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and now they're asking to put stuff in the 25 to 50-foot area.
No,
we have
that's
an EO.
more like 40.
Okay, so this is, so
But
they're
still
now,
not
this is
the-
now outside of 25, so now they're in the 50-foot to 100-foot area.
But I'll say it is an asphalt road,
Right.
right? It's not vegetation that they're
So
dumping on.
it's not like they're dumping giant boulders in soggy ground. They're just sticking it on asphalt. The fact that this has been asphalt ever since it's been discontinued is that it's within a bordering vegetated area, but it's never been vegetated. Yeah. BB. Okay.
They just wait till they get the NOI.
This is the whole point. He has access to free rock. If he's asking to not to. If nobody had complained about this, he would have just gone in and dumped in rock here. Now that we've noticed that he did this and he's aware that we're watching, he's asking for permission, which is great. I'm all in favor of people asking for permission instead of forgiveness.
Pull the email.
That was old Route 16, huh?
He's asking for permission, but there is
Right.
enforcement order.
So if you can get them free, just for trucking, that's his benefit.
Attached a draft plan that highlights where the first rock delivery took place in green and the second rock delivery may occur in red. Karen and I are very close to submitting the NOI for slope stabilization, and we're comfortable we will meet your deadline for May 29th. Property owner James Quirk would like to take a delivery of second round of stone within the next few days. As you can see on the plan, there's a silt fence in place down gradient side of the stone delivery area. Please let me know if you have and the commission members see issue with the delivery just now, and then waiting to do any earthwork and further heavy equipment until the NOI is filed and an order of conditions is issued.
Yeah, that was like my question was, how are you gonna protect was there by trucking on the rocks, but you answered that with you. That's gonna be an asphalt as well.
Somebody go and see after they put the rocks down to make sure.
You can see it from the road.
You can.
So this is one of the things the Conservation Commission exists to make sure that the state regulations, town bylaw don't harm people financially if they're not adversely impacting the resource area. And from my way of thinking, putting large boulders on top of an asphalt road.
It's just grubby there.
It's asphalt.
Oh, okay. So that helps. See, that picture actually helps.
That's, here's Nitwick Drive. And then the start of Park Street. And then the old Route 16.
Yeah, oh, that's Lakeville.
And so here's the stone that's been delivered, and you can see the black silt fence. And then here would be the rest that they're interested in putting. And there are old vehicles stored here as well, but.
Yeah,
so
the left of that gray patch kind of down there in the left corner.
this is.
And they're planning to build above that, behind that, where they're putting the rocks.
They're trying to make this a larger site. So a retaining wall somewhere here, yeah. This slope is.
Trying to make it buildable.
Across from Hideaway.
Remember that was whole big mountain?
Yes. Okay, so I'd like one of two motions. The first one is to say, no, don't put anything there, or the other is to authorize under guidance of our conservation agent. Let them. Somebody make a motion and somebody else second it.
Switzerland.
I'll make a-
Okay, I'll like
I'll make a motion to allow them to put rocks with the understanding that there's no work to be done other than the placement of rocks for use at a later date after NOI.
No dropping in mulch.
Hopefully the rocks aren't all silty, but.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstention.
Okay, passes. Motion passes. So let Mark Allen and his company good news.
No mulch.
Definitely. No more mulches in resource areas. All right. Agenda item 11 to Nitmuck Drive, DET 218-0837. Review activity. Mike Dean will be submitting a new NOI. I'd like to twist his arm and say,
Yeah, how long has this been? It's been months. Is it been months? Or is it just like? Months maybe? Yeah. How do we, get them to do stuff?
Well, with an enforcement order. So what I would say is that if we don't hear anything by the next meeting, then we will be discussing the issuance of an NOI,
And I know why.
sorry, of an enforcement order. So the expectation is that the applicant will come to us with a plan to explain what he's planning on doing, or we issue an enforcement order that tells him to undo what he did.
You want to wait another 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
We need to give him an ultimatum, yes. So the ultimatum would be, if you don't give us an NOI in 3 weeks, then we're going to be issuing an enforcement order. And during the meeting, we would have a discussion as to about what that enforcement order would be. It could be anything from have 2 more weeks to get us paperwork. It could be have a daily fine until you undo what you did. So we would have that meeting and we'd have a discussion and see what the people on the commission wanted to do.
Can he still work on the house, or is it that just that area that he can't work on?
We do at the moment, we don't have anything telling him not to do anything other than his good sense. That's what the whole enforcement order. And then we would be, if we were to do an enforcement order, if we were unclear as to what we were allowed to enforce, we'd refer the matter to town council. So, any pushback or comments on my?
I agree with you.
Okay, so then we would direct our conservation agent to send the appropriate email off to Mike Dean.
Yeah, the last email of Mike, Mike said it's not Benny's fault, it's his fault, he hasn't had time. So. I'll follow up again.
Yep.
Well,
My issue with a lot of the surveyors now is they take on more work than they can do. And it's, oh, well, I'll get to it when I can.
All right, updates from the chair. We did at the select board meeting last night, in addition to having our board liaison on the new chair, they also discussed their reappointment process. They are going to be, what they did at the meeting is they let Jeremy, the town administrator, listed out all of the board positions that are terminating, their terms are terminating in this year. And what the select board is doing is they're going to be advertising all of them. So planning board, not planning board, FinCom, ONCOM, all of the Board of Health, all of the other
Board of
town.
Health is elected.
You're right. Anyway, all of the ones that are
Appointed boards.
all of the appointed boards, they're now going to get posted. And so if you have any interest in serving on any of the other ones, then they'll be putting on the town website how you do the notification. And apparently they've updated the policy and procedure document on how to do that, but the updated one isn't on the website. So I'm going to elbow Jason and Jeremy to get the updated one, because I keep referring to the old one.
Are these for vacancies, or like, say your term is ending, do you have to reapply, or?
They are taking a blanket position that
I just took this week.
It's with Ellen.
Yeah, they are not going to just assume that people want to, they're just not going to, okay, you're back on it and after every 3 years. They're going to go through a process where both where the people, Peter and Tim in our case, both of them have to actively go through the whole process of getting reappointed, rather than just in the past, it's been, oh, hey, you want to be on again? Great. Okay, great. They're going to be formalizing it. This is part of what I call bringing Mendon into the 21st century.
Okay. If somebody's running again, that maybe didn't do a good job, the other applicant, I mean, like, do we have any?
If the interview process is that people who wish to be reappointed, they'll basically say why they want to be reappointed. People who are new will be interviewed by us. Then after we interview all of the current and potential new members, we vote on what our recommendation is. And then the select board hears our recommendation, they do their own interview. Way this worked last time is we interviewed 2 candidates and we decided, you know what? We're not going to make a recommendation. Select board, if you want someone on the board with this expertise, go for that. If you want someone on this board expertise, go for that. And that's how you ended up here instead of 1.
Sorry. Being an activist.
You are perfectly okay being an activist. Just be more polite next time.
You guys call bullshit when you see bullshit.
The problem is that and this is what he had trouble with, is that you were calling into question his professionalism and competency in preparing the document.
Right, but I was actually just calling him his delineation of Mr. Bell.
No, what the argument was about was not his delineation, but rather your analysis of what was on the paper. So again, I don't want to rehash the whole
No,
thing
it's
again,
fine.
but
I got you. I'll be more clear next time.
that was the basis of why he got
I
it.
could have added a few more words that would have cleared that
I got this gavel and I know how to use it. All right, so that's the chair update, conservation agent.
Just going off of that, we do have an application in for a letter of interest and sent from Jess Gemma. She lives next to Leah on a side
Across the
street.
street.
And I practice yoga with her. And so Jeremy said I can wait to schedule interviews for this board to make sure we get any other potential interests, so that we don't do one interview here and another in a month or so. But
She's
so-
very well qualified.
Yeah. I'm hopeful that maybe we get a few people to interview.
Yeah.
And then current members can also, be part of the interview process and.
That'd be good.
And. I met with Jeremy about Muddy Brook North for Lyndon Zook, who wanted to graze his cow. I've been nagging the select board for Jeremy and Katie about it, because I haven't gotten anywhere. So we finally met after town meeting. Jeremy thinks it has to be a request for proposals. We can't just offer it to one person to open it to everyone. So he was gonna write that this week. I don't have it yet, but I'm hoping to get something to Lyndon. It's been a long time.
And it does not have a town comment.
Not really.
If we did,
Which, phone spot.
if everybody had town vote, the town comment, anyone's entitled to graze on it. That's the whole point of why it's called the town common. Now, most towns don't have anybody grazing on it because it's pretty far away from any farm, and they'd have to bring the cows in and out.
There's some good grass there. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, well, that's interesting.
We met with the Lake Nipmuc people, so I figured this you'll update. Yeah, Peter's not here for one of these. Review and approve minutes. Did you get a second set?
No, I only have the April 24th.
Okay, I move to accept the minutes for April 24th, 2025. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Great. Good and welfare for the commission. Thinking about whether you want to serve as chair. Anyone else want to say something? Okay.
I mean, put me in coach if you want to, but I'd need a good vice chair. Somebody who stepped down might make a good vice chair. What? He doesn't want to be chair anymore. Yeah, that's just.
Time for new blood to come in and start working with Isabella on enforcement activities, and I'll just go back to being a softie.
No, you did a good job today. You had a little Perry Mason. What's with the plant? That's a white eggplant.
Well, Isabella picked up on it as well. You can't say something is a pedestrian path if you are authorizing a landscaper to drive on it and gouge trees. Okay. Any items not anticipated within 48 hours? Okay, agenda item 16.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
No discussion on the motion to adjourn. All in favor?
I
Opposed?
I want to stay till midnight. Yeah.
I don't.
You're outvoted.
Yeah, I could.
I wanted,
Just because.
I just want to clap.